Do you ever feel like your worship team just isn't clicking or gelling? Like maybe everybody's showing up and they're prepared, but they just don't feel together. Maybe the rehearsals feel rushed or the transitions feel awkward, and maybe the energy on stage isn't what you're hoping for. Here's the truth that I've learned. That's not a music problem. That's a culture problem. I'm Keith. I've been leading worship for over 20 years and coaching teams for 14 or 15 years. And today I'm going to help you figure out why your worship team might not be united and how you can fix it. And I remember when I really started to learn this, I was brought on to lead a team as a new leader where the old leader was transitioning out. And now it was a little bit of a longer transition. And so I was kind of getting to know everybody. The team had talent. The musicians were good. The singers were good. The band was tight. The mixes seemed pretty good. The transitions were clearly planned out, all that kind of stuff. But over time, the quality started to struggle. And it was obvious that focusing on the practical stuff wasn't fixing the decline of the team. It was about more than just execution. Turns out, I found out there was some gossip, which happens on a team, when it's unhealthy. And at this point, it was more like a team of people just playing songs together. And so I started to transition into the leadership role. A handful of the team left, right? And I didn't really know them, so I know that it wasn't about me, but it actually turned out to be helpful for me as a leader because I was immediately faced with this leadership challenge, and I was really learning on the fly. So I started being more focused at rehearsals, right? Like dialed in, clearer on the song transition, make sure we know the keys. But this didn't seem to affect how things were landing on Sundays. And maybe you've been there, right? Like you're working hard, it's just not working. So I started meeting with the team one-on-one, building relationships, letting them know I was for them, listening to their concerns. And what I found was a consistent thread that in the past, there were some inconsistencies in the expectations and the systems. Like, excellence was demanded, but the relationships and the communication weren't strong. So there was a stated focus on spiritual depth, but it wasn't really there. Sometimes it was at odds with the church. And I really stopped and started to realize for the first time that I was trying to fix a spiritual and relational issue with practical tools. And I didn't have a name for it at the time, but I leaned on what I now call the 360 worship framework. And it has 3 pillars. There's the spiritual, the relational, and the practical. I think of it like a pyramid. And we had been living upside down. I was leading from the practical first. And the song list, right? The schedules, the production. Instead of leading from the spiritual foundation so that it could bleed over into the relational. When you start with the spiritual, staying connected to God personally, and then you invest in the relational as an overflow, staying connected to your people, then the practical excellence really does start taking care of itself. Because here's the thing, you can't build unity on your team just based on skill alone. You build it through trust, prayer, shared purpose, things like that. Unity doesn't just happen because people serve on the same stage, even when they're serving God. You have to build it in intentionally. This means praying together before rehearsal, not just because, we're the worship team, it's a spiritual thing to do, but because it really does align our hearts when we seek God together. Maybe checking in midweek, sending a text that says, hey, how can I pray for you this week? Following up on something somebody shared in a previous week. Creating spaces for your team to actually connect as friends, not just teammates on Sundays. Back to my story, as I started to plan for how to handle this transition, my wife and I started having people over to our house. The team would linger after rehearsal a little bit more. People would start hanging out, laughing together. And then we kind of noticed that people were worshiping more at rehearsal versus just preparing songs. I started to feel the weight of making sure expectations were super clear beyond just a song key. And I started to see trust being built in the team. And realize that when people trust each other off stage, it really does translate to on stage. One time I've heard it say that the strongest sound you can produce as a worship team isn't your mix, it's the sound of a united heart. And I promise you this, if you start leading from relationship, you'll end up leading out of frustration. Frustration will be gone. Now, if this hit home for you, if you're looking at your team and you're thinking, man, we've got the skill, but we've lost some of the heart, I want to help you rebuild that foundation. That's exactly why I created a free mini course called the 360 Worship Alignment Framework. Now, it's going to walk you through that spiritual, relational, and practical step-by-step on how you build a healthy, unified worship ministry so that your team can thrive spiritually, relationally, and practically. You can grab it using the link in the description below, completely free. And I believe that your team and you as a leader are called for such a time as this to be more than just song leaders. I believe you can lead a move of God in your church, in your city, in your community, and we can see God worshiped in every heart, in every voice, in every mind. So I hope this was helpful, and we'll talk soon.